Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. Today, I always say I'm excited about episodes, but today I'm like extra excited because the person that I am talking to today has been a huge help in my healing journey with, the eliminating the relationship that I had with my dad and just kind of working through all of that. And the person is Dr. Sherrie Campbell, who is an author. She's a therapist. I'm not going to say everything she is. I'm going to let her tell y'all a little bit about herself and what she specializes in.
So hi everyone. I'm sort of the leader in the cutting ties niche of toxic family. I'm an expert, but I'm a survivor first, and I tell my story. And very few experts actually do that. I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm also a podcaster of therapy sessions, Cutting Toxic Family Ties. And I got my third book out on toxic family right now, Adult Survivors of Emotionally Abusive Parents, and media darling, and I just do all the things, private practice, single mom with a really loving boyfriend, but we're raising kids in two different counties. So just really wanting to help in this niche and give voice to the voiceless.
Yeah, and if y'all don't follow her, I'll put a link to her pages and stuff in the description of the episode. But just I think I started following you about, I don't know, 2-ish years ago. It was after you were on Call Her Daddy, the Call Her Daddy podcast. So I heard you there first and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is hitting home with me. Um, I haven't talked to my dad in 10 years, I think, at this point. And so, at first in that process with me, I didn't know how to deal with it. And then hearing you talk, I was like, wow, this is really hitting home. And then I also listened to you on Kristen Cavallari's podcast. And then you followed me on Instagram and I was like, oh my gosh, my world is just all aligning right now. This is awesome.
That's really great. I really love Alex Cooper, and Kristen Cavallari has a very special place in my heart. I just adore her. I think that we realize we're not alone when we hear a voice like mine, because it's very taboo to talk about this in you know openly. I say in my TED talk that we're not allowed to talk about the problematic character of bad parents in a culturally open and safe space, because we're not.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
safe. You get a lot of kickback culturally. So I think those three shows with such, big stars that those women are, um, really hit home with a ton of people. And I'm so grateful that those women, Alex Cooper and Kristen, gave voice to this. And Kristen shared much of her own story, which I think was also great, for the listeners.
Yeah, and you said it's not common, for people to talk about this. Do you think that's because it's you talk a lot about like the parent-child relationship? Do you think that I know any relationship that you end with someone toxic is hard to do, but I think that layer of having it be a parent kind of takes it to the next level, right?
Yeah, I mean, they chose to bring us here, and they had a responsibility to us and an accountability and an obligation to us. As hard as it is to cut ties with siblings or aunts, uncles, cousins, I, I think it's far harder to cut ties with a parent. We
Mhm.
need them. I like to explain it like if you were paralyzed, your brain does not know your legs are no longer working. Your brain's going to send signals to those legs all the time, but it's going to get stuck where the injury is, and the communication doesn't get down, and the legs no longer work. I cannot imagine that there being a paralyzed person out there not wanting their legs to work every day, not wishing they could walk. It's very similar to, we have these phantom limbs that are walking around on earth, but would rather die and go to their graves than do what it takes to have loving, healthy relationships with their children.
Mhm.
So it is so hard because we weren't born from siblings. They didn't choose us, right? These people brought us here. They had an obligation to us, and they did not fulfill that obligation outside of food, home, and shelter, if they even did that. Most of us got food, home, and shelter, but then we owe them for life. right? So it was never really given. It was financial abuse at the end of the day. You know,
Mhm.
I brought you in, I can take you out. They're older, they're more powerful, they're scary. You're a small child. What are you going to do? How are you going to go survive? We're the only animal that doesn't walk on the first day of birth. So it is far more hard on the identity of who you are. You can hear lots of people say, I'm cut off from my sibling, and there's far more acceptance of that than there is acceptance over children not talking to their parents. There's more acceptance over parents not talking to their children, which
Mhm.
is tough love.
Mhm.
But you
But
are,
but children are supposed to just stick it out because that's our parent, and they're doing the best they can, you know? Which, you know, for anyone who's not watching this on YouTube, I just did air quotes because it's like the amount of times I've heard that saying, you know? But I'm curious, like, I say that my dad is a narcissist, but I'm not a therapist, and so you know, I don't like to just say that about people, especially since that word is like thrown around a lot right now. It's kind of a buzzword, but just from someone who is a therapist and who specializes in this, how would you define a narcissist or like a toxic person to anyone listening?
so I would have everyone that's listening go look up the cluster B personality disorders. Um, some people say they're all a form of narcissism. I didn't learn them that way. I'm 53. Maybe that's changed. But there's narcissism, borderline, histrionic, dependent, antisocial. And I would also look up passive aggressive personality disorder, right? The character disorders are a flaw in the character. What they all have in common is they're very selfish, very self-centered. It's all about them and they're never wrong, right? Antisocial doesn't have anything to do with being social. It has to do with being amoral.
Mhm.
Okay. So if it's my way or the highway, and that is the fundamental part of this personality, then they could be any of those. I think it's important to know, like if I had cancer, I'd want to know what kind,
Mhm.
right? So narcissism, I think, or the word toxic, they're just easy ways to say what the character disorders represent in one word.
Mhm.
I would never just off cuff diagnose anyone narcissistic. I would want to sit with them for 4 to 6 sessions, but I could easily tell you that they're character disordered. I just don't know what flavor and what flavors most. For example, I think my mother's borderline, but she has a narcissistic and histrionic defense, and she's totally amoral. She's also 100% dependent. She's dependent on a family trust. She's dependent on relationships. She can't be alone. So if you're diagnosably one, what's important for people to understand is you have elements of all of them.
Mhm.
So for me, it isn't necessarily, that they're not narcissistic. It's like, well, what are they? So when I was really trying to figure my parents out, I looked at all of them and I included passive aggressive personality disorder and I highlighted what fit what, and that helped me to see
Mhm.
how much of whatever that they were. But I will also tell you that no amount of understanding my parents has made a difference in changing them or healing me. What it's
Mhm.
done is it has made me know how to better protect myself from certain elements of their personality. They use this more than this. My father was far more overtly toxic than my mother. My mother is very covert and much more cruel. And I would also say my father was borderline,
Mhm.
the narcissistic and antisocial defense.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think it's important to know those things, but really, how do you feel when you're around them? If you don't feel safe to be yourself, that tells you everything you need to know, more than
Mhm.
any.
Mhm. And I think it was I think I heard this when you were talking with Kristen, that narcissists actually do know what they're doing. I think for a long time, like I made excuses. Like, my dad doesn't have a relationship with his dad. And so I found myself a lot thinking, okay, well, he doesn't know better. I was falling victim to like believing the stuff everybody wants you to believe. But you said on her podcast, they actually do know what they're doing. It's not that they're just not able to have like empathy and compassion, right? Is that
Yeah, I mean, we really dumb them down to say they don't know what they're doing. Listen,
mhm,
my dad was physically abused and he physically abused me. He didn't like being physically abused. Why would I?
mhm.
We if we don't learn good and bad, like at home, we all go to school.
Yeah. But your dad, you said your dad also did to you what was done to him.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so we have like similar. My dad wasn't physically abusive, he was just emotionally abusive, which a lot of times I think is more of a mind trip because it's like, wait, am I just being like weak here? I mean, there's nothing like
No, I get
tangible to
it.
hold on to.
Yeah, my dad wasn't physically abusive every day. It was probably 4 moments over my lifetime, but he was emotionally abusive every day.
Yep.
I got
Yeah.
called a fucking prick. I got called a loser. I got
Mm.
called, you know,
An
all kinds of
embarrassment.
things. Yes. Get your shit together. What's wrong with you? Be smart. I mean, just constant. I think all abuse is emotional, though. I think that when he hits me, it hurt my heart. It hurt my soul. It hurt my worth. When he called me a fucking prick, it hurt my heart. It hurt my soul.
Hmm.
If I were ever to have been molested, which I was not, but when my dad told me I was his sexual partner in other lifetimes, and that's why my mom hates me today, that confused me. It hurt my heart. We feel everything.
Yeah.
So they do know what they're doing. Parents are given a public free pass because I think it's just too difficult to admit that abuse is happening to the most innocent members of our human family by their parents, which
Hmm.
is children. Um, my dad's hitting me, those wounds healed far more quickly than the fact that he would ever want to hit me in the first place,
Hmm.
or the were mean things that he said to me. They last a lifetime. So they know what
Yes.
they're doing. They know right from wrong. And if you don't learn it at home, you learn it at school. Some people learn it at church. You can learn it in many places. You learn it in a workplace. There are rules of behavior wherever we go.
Hmm.
So
But do
what
you think
parents,
though that they're like born with it? Because both of our dads like repeated history. So like, do you think that narcissism and things like that are learned behaviors or um just you're born with it? Because I feel like it
I
can't
think it
be
doesn't
just passed
matter.
down.
I think it doesn't matter.
Okay.
We have choice. We
Yeah.
all have choice. It just doesn't matter. And there's no answer to that question. We researchers, they really don't know if it's genetic or if it's not, certainly who we're raised by has a giant influence over us, right? And you'll hear the excuse, well, I mean, he abused you because he was abused. So
Yeah,
it's
it's like,
okay.
so stop the pattern.
Right. Like make a different choice.
Hmm.
You know, they don't want to. The thing is what they want is authority, power, and control. And maybe to them, they're sick enough to think that that's some form of love. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you find though that it's like, because I have two siblings and I think do you have one sibling? So do you find that there's like a for sure answer with this? I don't know, but like, do they target one specific child? Because both of my sisters, they're my half sisters, they have a relationship with my dad, but I can't, all I can go off of is how he treated me. And I went back and forth between his house and my mom's house growing up. And I saw a difference in the two households and
yeah,
how I was treated and felt in both of those. So I don't know if he does my sisters the same way. I have no clue, but it's a good excuse for him to the public that it's my fault we're not talking because his other two daughters love him. What's wrong with Samantha? I don't really know, like he uses that as an
yeah.
excuse.
You're the scapegoat, as was I. There is differential treatment between siblings because the most toxic person functions on conquer and divide. Siblings can't be close because otherwise they lose manipulative power
Mhm.
over being able to control everyone. I would say to you that my golden child brother, to me is a victim. Um, and he is totally in alignment with all the lies and being the golden boy, and there can only be one star in the family. There was absolutely differential treatment, which makes it very painful for the one who's not being treated well because you're bearing witness to someone else getting what you want or what you deserve as well, and you're not getting it. Therefore, it is a choice, a conscious choice. We don't like trip and fall and accidentally have an affair with someone, right?
Uh-huh.
We also don't just accidentally trip into abusing our children. It's a conscious choice. Whatever they want to do to justify that, I was told I was difficult. I wasn't easy. I came out screaming and never stopped. Well, why? Why?
Mhm.
Why don't you look at the why was I that way? That why was because of how you were treating me, right? So you come from a different mother than those other girls. And so whatever hatred he may have for your mom, you're a reminder of that. That could be one story. But I would say that your sisters may be daddy's little girl, but there are conditions to that that I promise you they will maybe not even recognize or not want to recognize in their lives that
Mhm.
they owe him that. There's a pressure. So they're sick in however they golden or scapegoat because none of it is authentic. It is all for power and control.
Mhm.
So he's using them for his image to justify the truth that you carry so that no one will believe you. And that is exactly what goes on in my family.
Mhm.
So I get it.
Yeah, and it's like you said that the wounds are gonna stick with us forever. And it really does. Like I live about 30 minutes from my dad, and I've never ran into him in 10 years until last month. I ran into them, that whole family at a restaurant. And Sherrie, I walked into the restaurant and I heard like some chaos coming from the side. Look up there and it's my whole family. And they are like, I I'm going to use the word bullying because I don't really know how else to
It's
say it, but
bullying.
they're just sitting there kind of poking and prodding, trying to like make a scene in this restaurant. And I stood there at the hostess stand and thought to myself, I have a choice. I can either sit in here and deal with this, which leading up to that moment, I always thought I'd be able to. But the feeling that came over me in that moment, it reminded me of why I don't have anything to do with that family today. And so I turned around, I told the hostess, look, you know what? I think it's best for me to go somewhere else. And I walked out. I didn't even turn around and look at them. And when I got in the car, you go through these grieving things, or I did, where I was like, should I have stayed? But that's what that toxicness does to you.
It does. And we have a pressure from society.
Yeah.
We question ourselves as much from society saying family is everything than are the actual abuse of our parents. It's a secondary abuse that we go through. And it breaks my heart, Samantha, to hear that story because that would unnerve me.
Mhm.
I'm the expert writing the books. It would absolutely take me to my knees. Why? Because we want to love them. And that feeling that you had is a testament to what a great heart you have, and that you want to love someone who cannot and will not allow you, because their idea of loving you is to keep you subservient and abused so
Mhm.
that you carry it, you carry the family pain. Um, there are triggers that I run into that can also trigger me. I got some mail the other day about this trust that was left by my grandmother, and it was supposed to be left to educate all the grandchildren, but I'm blocked from it. because my mom's idea of getting me to be in contact with her is to starve me back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will get my daughter through school. We are doing just fine. In fact, I got 2 years free already uh,
Uh-huh.
in California. We got the Promise Scholarship. So
But she wants that, they want that hold over
they
you.
want the hold. They manipulated my dad's death. Um, and not that I would have gone, but he is still my dad. I
Yeah.
found out on Google, as you heard on Call Her Daddy, but
Wow.
it's this notice came from the trust. And I'm not a great contract reader, you know, I'm a shrink. So, but I read that, you know, if I didn't agree with this, that I could set a time to have a hearing. And I'm like, oh my God, it was some type of petition. So I sent it over to my boyfriend and he's like, and I thought the worst. And I don't want the trust. I don't want the money. It's dirty money to me. No one's going to owe me because of money.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a trust that she has lived off of and lied about her whole life to me. So I don't care. I would rather be independent and completely and not have her in my life because she's so wicked. But just to see that was triggering for me. So I can't imagine walking into a restaurant and their bodies are actually there and they're bullying. We are human. We are their children. And the
Uh-huh.
audacity within which they will bully us is shocking to the system. And I think that for the remainder of your life, you would probably have that same visceral experience. When I was told my dad was ill, my mom roped someone into the middle. He said to her, I don't know that Sherrie needs closure. Uh, my dad's last words to me were a violent threat to put me in a hospital. So, um, my
Well,
mom,
so you probably did need closure. It's like,
I didn't need closure. I was good. I don't,
yeah, it's
you want
like,
to put me in a hospital? I think I'm good. You've had 7 years to own that or apologize for it. So I thought, you know, this guy said to my mom, but since you're asking me to deliver such serious, you know, information, let me know what he's at least sick with. And she goes, nope, she can call me if she wants to know. You know, if he's gonna die, he's dying of something. I don't need to know. I'm not going to allow you to use his death to get me to have contact with you. It's
but why'd she want you
so
to call her
sick.
anyways, though? Just so she could feel like she won? Like, is that what they think?
They want to win, and I think she would want to play the good mom because, see, I would imagine in her narcissism that her not having control over me anymore and me writing these books probably is hard on her image because she thinks the books are likely about her. They're not about her. They're actually about me.
Right.
But
Yep.
she's too narcissistic and borderline to think. Now, the borderline doesn't want to let go. I mean, she wants control over me. So I think she thought that my dad's death would do it, you know, that I would fall
Mm-hmm.
apart at his death. He died for me many years prior. I've
Right.
been grieving the living dead for 8 years now and for 13 years with him. Um, was it triggering for me that she would try to manipulate my dad's death? And I find out years later she was threatening people not to tell me? For what?
Yeah.
It's all a game. So we will have reactions to these things because the audacity that they have to be this way shamelessly is shocking.
Yeah, and they try to pretend to the outside world, like, which I think is where that shame comes from when you cut a parent off from
Yes,
people because they're confused because they think that your parent is a likable person because most narcissistic people are very likable to the outside world.
very. My mom runs charities.
Yep.
She runs charities. She is really charming. I'll give it to her. She's extremely charming. And no one believed me.
Hmm.
Also, she treated my brother like a king. So I was in a small town and everyone went along with Sherry's just a bad egg.
Hmm.
Okay, but so you delete that there's 9 marriages between my parents. Like,
Uh-huh.
but it's because you think my brother's good because he's also charming. He's taken on all the traits of both of my parents
Hmm.
in private.
Mm-hmm. I know. Why is it in private though? Just because they're so concerned with their public image? Because it really is. It's like two different people, like mask on, mask off. Like they act so social and happy out here, and then they come home
That's right.
and they target you and they just bring you down.
So I posted this morning, and this states it perfectly, is that there are many toxic mothers, fathers, siblings, and so on who appear charming and community minded, um, who turn into a home devil in the privacy of their family.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they curate an image. In one of my books, I talk about it as being the billboard, right? They have a billboard and it's the most decorated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they thrive on that image and they don't want anything to tarnish it. And so if you tarnish it, you tell the truth or you question the truth, you question the fact that you know the billboard is built on lies
Mm-hmm.
and you know what's happening. But most people don't know how toxic someone is unless they are in the closest circle to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also by design. They want no one to believe you. I was actually cut off. And that was the game that was played my whole life. Cut her off and make her beg back. So this last time I was like, it was over something so ridiculous that I was like, I just can't.
You're at your breaking point.
And now it's 8 years
Mm-hmm. Well,
with
and that's
con
the thing, like you have a breaking point. You're a human. And that's what people like. I don't understand how people can't see that like, hey, if I've gotten to the point of being cut off by a family member or cutting them off myself, like this has been a long, like thought out process. Like you said, you're working through it in your mind thinking, am I crazy for feeling this way because everyone else likes them? And it really makes you not trust yourself, or it did me.
Yeah, and that is what keeps us stuck. They want us to have it's no different than a cult.
Yep.
In my new book, I talk about the exact same pattern of leaving a cult is the same as leaving a toxic family. They do a smear campaign to jump in front of the truth before you even have a shot. I was actually smeared already by middle school. I was already being smeared to teachers and peers, and Sherrie's she's a lot of work, all the things. Um, I was just labeled crazy. And
Do you
so
think it's because they knew you were going to stop talking to him eventually that they started it that early?
I think that they never thought that. I think they thought, and I also thought that I was such a weak, decrepit, wretched human being that I
Mhm.
would just never leave. Um, I think moving away from the state I lived in to another state was my first step in really getting perspective on my abuse and really being able to start becoming like my own person. I just wanted far away from them. And initially, the relationship got better
Mhm.
with some proximity. But when I had my daughter and I started seeing life very differently, it made my abuse very clear to me and how bad it was.
Mhm.
How my mom wanted in every way that she could to make me fail, to make my life so fucking hard that I
Mhm.
would not be able to live it without a dependency on her.
Mhm.
And she's never loved me. She's always hated me.
Mhm.
And it's not that there weren't seemingly loving moments, because abuse does not work without doses of kindness being dolloped in there.
Mhm.
But I can say that most of those nice moments were done after she had driven me to hate her and to show it. And she was so satisfied when she got me there. And then she'd love bomb me.
Mm.
Or she needed me for something, like throwing me in the middle of one of her marriages and an affair. Needing me for something was another time that she would love bomb me, and then we'd be best friends. But
Mhm.
she's a very evil, self-centered woman who only thinks about herself. Um,
Mhm.
Having my daughter and the way that I feel toward her, and how in love with her I am. I can't, it still boggles my mind that a woman like my mother could treat me the way that she does. So I know she never loved me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those are painful things, but getting away from her made me very clear. And then, I cut ties in midlife. I just didn't mend the fence.
Mm-hmm.
42 with my father and brother, and then 45 with my mom. It took me a little longer with her.
Yeah, and I think too that obviously it's unfortunate to have to go through all of that, but I think that it has it's quite literally made me who I am today, and I think that I don't think there's any way I would be who I am today if I wouldn't have had to go through all that. So like, yeah, it sucks, but my life now, like that feeling I felt at the restaurant last month, that was the first time I'd felt that in 10 years. Like I
Yeah,
don't feel those feelings anymore.
no, not until you see them. It is really wild when you recognize they're alive,
Hmm.
moving around, because the way that our
Yeah.
brain works, it's like we're grieving the living dead. We know they're there, but like somebody who had genuinely passed away, we don't see them. We just know
Hmm.
they're there. But to be in the face of the shock of being like, oh, they're here is increasing your emotional response by a tremendous amount, right? I
Hmm.
also think that it's not hateful. Like I can tell that you're not hating of them. I don't hate her. I don't hate them. No contact isn't about anything but my own self-preservation. I'm not safe emotionally if they're in my life. I cannot grow and I cannot work on myself if they are in my life. I don't hate them. I don't want revenge. Um, I know that they, however, are very aggravated that I'm not hateful, that I'm not suffering, that I am thriving without them. They set it up so that I could not do that. And they wanted that kind of suffering for me.
And then you did.
And I did. And that's the naivety of these people is that we have a bandwidth to which we will run out of with enough abuse.
Hmm.
So I think that does shock them. And that's why they start the smear campaign and they try to paint the billboard and jump in front of the truth. And they do all of those things because it really, it really just must get on their last nerve that we're not suffering without them.
Hmm.
We suffer with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for anyone listening who is maybe, I don't know, starting to see signs of a family member or parent or whatever, and thinking of cutting ties, like that process, it's a long one, it's a lifelong one, I think. But what I ended up doing that really helped me is I started, number one, reading a lot, but number two, like figuring out who I am through like, I don't know, I got really into the Enneagram. I was obsessed with the Enneagram. Like if you ever talked to me at that time in my life, I was making everyone take it. Um, and you're an Enneagram 6, I think I saw somewhere. I'm a
Yes,
6 also.
yes,
So
makes sense.
so you get how I feel then, and I get the same with you. But so that's what I did. But what are some other things people can do to kind of heal through that, and learn to trust themselves again?
So what I did is I sought everything inside and outside of psychology. I took the MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs. I'm an INFJ. I'm a 6 on the Enneagram. Um, I did my human design chart. I'm actually a human design analyst as well. Got into therapy, write in a journal, and read, read, read. Knowledge is power. The benefit of knowing what traits they have of the various character disorders is that it awakens you to, oh my God, that's what passive aggression is. My podcast goes over all the different character disorders in detail so that people really understand what flavors of each, because they all use a different kind of warfare. They all use the same tricks, but they use them differently, right? So
Hmm.
it does help you recognize that it's not you and it's them. And I think it's important that you take responsibility off yourself and you put it on them. It is so crazy to me that for so long, I have suffered horrible abandonment syndrome because of I'm not going to speak to you because you didn't, I don't know, do some mysterious thing that I somehow didn't mind read that I was supposed to do, right? So
Yeah.
I'd be just ignored and tantrumed around, and she'd be stomping and eye rolling and all the other things to let me know what a piece of shit I was. So I really feel like knowing what monsters are in my basement from how I was treated, those criteria helped me see how I got to feeling like a burden, like I'm not important, that I'm effort, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm extra. I'm an
You're
extra.
too much. That's what I heard.
Yes, I'm too much, or too little of something good, too much of something bad. It was all the things. It helped me to separate my stuff from their stuff, right? Me from them. Because forever I'm like, am I abandoning them? Am I abandoning my mom and dad? Well, I left the family so they would stop abandoning me.
Mm-hmm.
So people can judge if they want, but unless they live this, they don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Do not.
and that goes to like your heart. Like that goes to show the difference between narcissistic people and non, because they aren't thinking of them abandoning you. Like we were
No,
thinking, did I give them enough of a chance? Like, did I try long enough? Have I thought this through enough? Like that's because we're good people at our core, you know?
that's right. And it's offensive when I've been, have you really thought this through? I have thought, I have made up things to think through, to
Yeah.
say. Like
Uh-huh.
I started making stones to unturn. Defamiliarization is something I talk about in my most recent book. And that's probably the hardest part of no contact is you're in this life that you're totally abused in. It's all you know. You're identified as the problem, right? You've got
Mm-hmm.
a role. But when you think about a life outside of it, it's like you don't know, you have no guarantee if that's going to be better than what you're in. But you do know that if you leave, you're never allowed to come back,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the threat that they put you under is complete rejection. Um, and that is really scary. That's a scary thing. And that to me was a process of moving here first and at 26, and then I had a baby at 33, and then ties were cut by 45.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it took decades for me to do it.
Yeah, like I've thought it through frontwards, backwards, all the ways,
And that
multiple
is
times.
because we want to love them. We
Mm-hmm.
want connection. We want attachment. Go find one child who does not want or desire an attachment to their parents. I'm not saying there aren't toxic adult children out there. There are very difficult children. A lot of them have mental illness issues, right? But if you end up in a relationship where you're cutting ties with your family because you've been abused your whole life, that's different. Now, my mom will tell everyone that I'm the narcissist, I'm toxic, I'm this, I'm that. I asked my therapist, am I toxic? Am I a narcissist? And she just laughed. She's like, if you even ask the question, you can't be. That already
Mm-hmm.
shows insight.
Because they don't take ownership, right? Like they wouldn't even think to halfway
Ask.
believe it.
Never,
So
never.
do they ever heal? Like
Mm-mm,
they don't. It's just always there.
mm-mm. They don't want
Okay.
to heal. If you're always right, they don't even have a concept that they need to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was abused, my reaction was what was focused on, not the abuse that caused my reaction. So if my
Mm-hmm.
mom was covertly poking at me and poking at me and poking at me and I lost my temper, she'd go, "You're abusing me." Okay. And then I would be like, well, I was mad. I did react. I guess I am. Right. Because I couldn't see what was happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or if my dad was cruel to me and I cried and then he'd call me weak. Right. So, or a baby,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, I did cry. It did hurt my feelings. I guess I am weak. I guess I am a baby. Right.
And then you believe that for until you, I mean,
Yeah.
I still struggle trying to not to unbelieve the stuff, you know?
Same. Same.
Like every single day I have to like I write in a journal and I have to consciously tell myself things over and over because I'm trying to unlearn. You know, I think I was 26 when I stopped talking to my dad, but I'm trying to unlearn no, I must have been like cuz I'm 34, so 24. I had to unlearn that much stuff.
Yeah. And it's a process of unlearning forever. I would say in again, the latest book, I talk about three aspects of self. And I call it little Sherrie, but I fucking hated her
Mhm.
because I did feel it was her fault that I was so wretched. I was
Mhm.
so difficult. She needed too much. She was weak. She was a baby. She was all of these things. And as the person I was current, I kept trying to overcompensate for her. In fact, I tested out as a 2 on the Enneagram until I took the test again like 8 months ago. And now I test out as a 6. I thought that was so curious. And I thought, why is that? Well, the 2 in all of its authenticity, it's a beautiful number, much nicer than the 6.
Yeah, the 6
Okay.
is not a beautiful number.
No, the 6 is not. But I think I was authentically trying to be what I thought other people
Yeah.
needed or wanted me to be,
And the two's the helper, right?
a helper. And I'm a therapist and I have a lot of 2 in me, but I never ever got too dived into the Enneagram because it didn't fully fit. And I think it's because unconsciously I was maybe authentically answering the questions as I thought I was supposed to be in the world,
Yep.
right? After 8 years of no contact, I thought, well, I'm going to retake all of these tests. I'm still hands down an INFJ to the max, which really lines up with a 6.
Uh-huh.
And when I read the 6, it hurt my heart.
Me too.
And I just thought, well, God, that's fucking sad.
So sad. It is
I
so
mean,
sad.
Samantha, I was like, I want to be a 2 again. Like, well, but when I went home, and I hope this is helpful for you being a 6, I went home and I wrote everything down in my journal that I could. And whatever came from text, I put in a little cloud and then I dialogued underneath it. I couldn't be more proud now to be a damn 6
Hmm.
because it was like emotional cannibalism for me
Hmm.
growing up. Um, it was like this idealized, devalue, discard, and hoover and suck me back in. They love to idealize and they love to discard, but they don't want to do the work in between, which is why they would devalue me and call me needy or I was insecure. Of course I was. You're freaking mean to me.
Yeah,
But
listen what you're telling me.
the 6 is concerned about loyalty. The 6 is suspicious of other people. The 6 is no longer Little Red Riding Hood in the forest. The 6 has some wisdom. You have to earn your way into my life now,
Hmm.
right? You have to, I am concerned. Probably the saddest part of the 6 for me is, when is the bottom going to fall out?
Hmm.
I have that feeling all the time. There's 9 marriages between my parents. The bottom was falling out all the time.
Hmm.
Okay. Because when parents divorce, they change. Even the healthiest of parents, I'm divorced. I changed.
Me too.
Okay. So then my daughter had a new version of me. But then
Yep.
when they remarry, they change.
Hmm.
And I was getting lost in all of those things because I wasn't a shiny penny the same as my sibling. Right.
Hmm.
So the 6 has that fear that the bottom's going to fall out. And I don't know that I will ever rid myself of that. I don't know that I feel like I have to. I kind of use it for a superpower
Yep.
in that I work very hard so the bottom won't fall out. Would I love to not maybe work from that type of mindset? Perhaps, but I do think it serves me. I think those fears bring me wisdom because I look at them. It makes
You're
me very,
prepared.
yes, it makes me very articulate. I always have a plan. I call it plan B to my
Hmm.
girl. I have a plan B just in case plan A isn't working, right?
Yep.
I think it's made me prepared and resilient. And so I no longer have sadness. I think the 6 is very deep. It's also very rare.
Yes, that's why when I heard you were a 6, I was like, oh my gosh, because I don't ever hear of other people being a 6.
Oh, me neither. I'm like, oh, I want to go back to being a 2. But I really don't. You know, the INFJ is only 1%,
Yep.
those who take it. So it is all falling into an alignment. But I think learning about your pain, really learning about it and educating yourself every day. We need to hear over and over and over again that they know what they're doing.
And then you start connecting the dots. Like, okay, so like as I was reading the Enneagram, and I'm also an INFJ too. And so as I was reading all that, I'm like, oh my God, so this connects with this and this connects with this. And that's why I do that. Like it just, knowledge is power. And I think that knowledge of yourself is the most powerful thing
It
anybody
is
can have.
because it makes you articulate.
Yep.
I think to be articulate is to be in the truth, to
Hmm.
have an adherence to truth. I no longer want to hang my hat on, I forgave them, or I understand them, or none of that has helped me. None of
Yeah.
it. Forgiveness led to more abuse, to be quite honest. I now really just work toward acceptance. And acceptance is far deeper than forgiveness in my experience of it,
Hmm.
because I have to accept something I don't want to as reality. Forgiving my parents didn't fucking change them. It made them worse. And
Hmm.
I truly believe, and I think I shared this with Kristen, I honestly think that my mom is relieved. I do. I think that my need or want for her to be a good mom, and I tried so hard to tell her how I felt. And she's never, I self-published a poetry book. She never read it. She's she's never been on my team. She's never wanted to be. And I think that she wanted me out. And she pushed me out. And I honestly think she's relieved, because I don't think she has to look in the mirror of my face, who mirrors back to her that she's an abuser, because she's never tried hard to repair, ever.
Hmm.
Never once has she even asked. Okay. So I think she's relieved. I think we're better to be free from one another. I don't wish anything. My mom's so miserable that
Which one of those behavioral types is the one, did you say your mom is the most? Like which part of the, is there 5 of them you said?
yeah, I add passive aggressive personality disorder. I think that my mom's very borderline, and I think she's got a high narcissistic defense.
Well, because I was just asking because you said she's never reached out, and neither has my
Ever.
dad, and I was just in the same building as him a month ago. So he
So
can
my
tell
mom
people
has reached
whatever.
out. She hasn't reached out for repair. So
Okay.
let
Okay.
me tell you how she reached out. When ties were cut, she cut me off. 8 months went by. 8.
Uh-huh.
And then randomly at Christmas, she sends a gift, and the gift was fractured with no gift receipt. What the gift was, she broke it and sent it. So there's no other way to explain it. The goal being, with no gift receipt, what would I have to do? I'd have to
Caller.
call. So I did not do that. And I didn't do that for 5 years. I was getting reached out to with these cryptic, passive aggressive, non-provable gifts.
Mhm.
Then she did it to my daughter on my daughter's 16th birthday with my daughter's gift. The critical piece was missing. She went in, unpackaged it, removed that piece, repackaged it, and sent it no gift receipt. At that point, my therapist was like, this is satanic.
Yeah.
And you are now going to write her a note that says, if you continue to send gifts and cards this way, they will be returned or donated. I was so afraid to return them because she's so sadistic that I think she would tell people that she sent me the gift. I broke it and sent it
Yeah.
back. to
Yeah,
her.
it's like you have to think so far out of the box of like weird things that they could come up with because it sounds like to anyone listening who has like a healthy relationship with their parents, you're probably like, what in the
This is
hell?
insane.
Yeah, but
Right.
it's like it's very real.
It is
It's
so real.
uh,
And then how can I make this up? She sent a friend of hers to my Facebook page to say I was a liar and using my childhood story as a money-making scheme after Kristen.
man, my sisters did the same thing on my page.
Yes, they all have a playbook. So I actually addressed the woman and I said, thank you so much for your comment because you're showing my following that my abusive me is alive and well, right? And then I believe that this woman may not have really known what she'd done. And now I have information about my mom and sibling that they didn't know that I had, and it's very bad.
Mhm.
So I don't want them ever doing that to me again, coming to my place of work and trying to do the things. First of all, how can I make this detail up?
And why
I,
would you? Why would you want to
why
share
would
stuff like
I? Like,
that?
how could I make up that someone would break a gift or pillage something from it, send it? I mean, I can't do that.
No,
I
you
wouldn't even
cannot.
know where to start with that type of stuff. I'm not Stephen King. So
Right.
I think it is surreal for people. They cannot believe that a mother would do that. And then when I sent the note to my mom after what she did to my daughter on her 16th birthday, my mom's sister cut me off. I'm like, you just cannot make this up. So I have not one family member. So she did not reach out to me for repair. She reached out to manipulate me to repair.
Mhm.
Broken gifts, hijacking my father's death. I ended up finding out on Google that he had died. Um, but you will find out the truth is something you can trust, and authenticity is something you can count on. So that's what I hang my hat on now. I
Mhm.
know the truth will come out. I know that it will lead me to my most authentic self. I just need to stay in my lane. I do the best I can to turn the volume down on what they do, what they say. I used to really care. It used to hurt me. I would just be in tears, telling just the most hellacious lies about who I am. And, you know, the woman I ended up confronting, she came to my page and I wrote her an email and yeah, she deactivated her Facebook account.
Yeah, it really is unbelievable, but I know it's all believable because I've been through it and it's just that's why your books were so helpful to me and we'll
If your
link.
sisters were well and not abused, they wouldn't have come on your page and said anything like that.
Amen. I mean, I could just start clapping right now, but that wouldn't be good for the audio, but it's like, yeah, but it's sad like you said, really they're the victims, like they don't even
Yeah.
know it.
Long term. Like
Mhm.
when you think of a cult, and we can, I don't want to name any, but we can know that there are several celebrities in a certain cult, right?
Yeah.
Never getting out because when you look at the documentaries done, they torture you. And if you're the most golden of the cult. You're so blackmailed in, and there's all this secret keeping that's going along. So they're manipulated by the secrets. There's no getting out and there's no getting better. It's learning to let
Mm-mm.
go of hope. And what a sad thing to have to let go of, because you can have hope in you and hope in other areas of your life. But if you sit around and you hope that you're one day, if you stick it out long enough, that one day it's going to go your way, you're going to live your life miserable.
Mhm.
Loving the wrong people makes us live a very miserable life. And just unfortunately, for some of us, our family members are just not lovable people.
Yep. Yeah. And your TED Talk's called what's it called? Not all parents are good.
Correct.
See? And that is the exact, I mean,
Not
and
all
just
parents are bad,
yeah.
right? But we don't want to talk about the problematic character of bad parents. It's there had to be changes made to my TED Talk legally.
Mhm.
And all that did before the talk was prove to me how necessary my talk was because I had to remove
Absolutely.
a certain section of my TED Talk before I spoke. And I understand it. It's
Hmm.
okay. I'm so blessed to have been on their stage. I understand it.
Yeah.
But it really drove the point home that we are not allowed, we are all afraid to go against the
The
all
norm.
powerful parent.
Hmm. Hmm. No,
Why?
it
Because
is like,
they're going to lose their minds and do crazy things. Think about it. That's why.
mhm.
That's why.
No, it's just like I'm like at a loss of words because I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just resonates so much. And I just thank you for sharing all this and
Of
for
course.
writing your books and for doing all the stuff that you do. And again, I'll link everything in the description so everybody can read it and look into it and hopefully heal themselves as well. So
Absolutely. And I think too, if you just want an introduction, the TED Talk's 11 minutes. You know, it'll it's going to hit or it's not,
mhm,
right? But I do think there's more than an emotionally immature parent. I think there is a toxic, sadistic parent and an emotionally immature parent. I think you can gray rock and I think you can have low contact and have a nice journey, but not
mhm.
with parents like yours and mine.
No,
Sure.
it's literally impossible.
Impossible.
Well, thank you, Sherry, for coming on.
You bet, honey. I appreciate you having me.